Hey everybody, I want to talk about something. It's called the Anchor app. It's the easiest way to record a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So I want you to do something for me. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome to an Outwork You Thursday edition of the 2-2 podcast. Listen, I'm so glad you could join me today. Get a notebook, get a pen, get a piece of paper, get your phone out, get your iPad out, whatever you need to do to get these notes today. This is going to be a great one. So that being said, let's lock in. Communication is a key in life. It's needed for your job. It's needed for friendships. It's needed to get your car fixed. It's needed at the grocery store. And it's needed in your romantic relationships. Communication keeps the world moving. But if not done correctly, it can lead to misunderstanding and confusion. It can destroy as much as it can repair. For the last few weeks, we've talked about the Confusion Chronicles. Each one of the messages the last few weeks has been about things that have been confused. Love, trust, communication. This week being communication. And I wanted to take the time just a little bit today on this Outwork You Thursday. By the way, I hope you have your notebook. I hope you have your iPad. I hope you have everything that you need to take down these notes, because you are going to want to apply these to your life to make communication a lot better. Allow me to start off by saying that oftentimes I've had problems with communication, whether it's how I felt or whether it was what was going on, or communicating, like giving instructions to somebody, being able to deliver a message in a proper way. I've had problems with communication. Some of those involving the emotional side, how I feel, feelings, were because of how you were trained and how you were reared in order to, how you were reared as a boy, that, men don't communicate their feelings. That there's always that theory and there's that opinion that men shouldn't communicate their feelings. And that's how some of us were raised. And so it took me well into my adult years to realize that I need to use my words and tell how I feel. And so I wanted to, like I said, take the time to talk about the confusion of communication, confusing the levels, confusing certain levels of access, confusing certain levels of talking to somebody, and just the value of proper communication when it comes to life, comes to relationships, when it comes to work, when it comes to everything. So let's go to it. So let's talk about, just for a second, sorry, drinking a little water. Let's talk about the definition communication, because the word can take on different meanings. It can have a different outcome to different people. What are those meanings? Here's the definition. Here's Webster's dictionary. Here's the Webster dictionary definition for the word communication. Communication is imparting or exchanging, or the exchanging of information or news. Another word for that, synonyms for those, are transmission, imparting. A lot of times you hear imparting in church. Imparting wisdom into somebody. Conveying a message. That's another, conveying is another synonym for that. Reporting, like watching the news, writing a book report. When you write a book report, you are reporting information to people for them to read and to understand and to grow. That's why there are book reports, news reports, all of that. Presentation. Ever did a PowerPoint presentation? When you do a PowerPoint presentation, it's a visual expression of communication. So that passing on information, there's so many other definitions, so many other synonyms for the word communication. Another definition is the successful conveying or sharing of ideas or feelings. There was example of that is the lack of communication between a kid and their parents. A kid and their parents. There's a lack of communication in there. Another definition, the means of sending information, such as a phone line or computer. Your phone is a way of communication. Facebook is a way of communication. Social media is a way of communication that we oftentimes use properly and oftentimes abuse its power and abuse the power that you have within it. Here's the root word for the word communication. It is a Latin word that means communicare, which means to share. Basically, you're sharing information in regards to how you feel, how you feel, what you want, what you need, what somebody else needs, what's going on in the world. And so there are so many, what was previously stated, that communication and the word and the meaning behind it has so many definitions. And so we need to learn the value of imparting or exchanging information or news, the successful conveying of sharing of feelings and ideas. And I believe that right now there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of communication in so many ways, but there's a lack of wanting to listen and to be willing to listen. There's a quote that says, the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, but we listen to reply. We'll say that quote again. The biggest communication problem is that we do not listen to understand, but we listen to reply. We have to understand that the biggest thing with communication is there's a point that we have to understand what somebody is saying. We do not listen to understand. We listen to eventually create a rebuttal, to overlap and try to overpower the next person. And so we have to come together and communicate what's going on in our culture and in our world and in our family. We have to be willing to communicate to understand. But here we go. So let's talk about a few things that communication is, and then we'll go into the 5 degrees of communication. By the way, the 5 degrees of communication, let me first off, before I go any further, I want to thank my friend Maisha Russell for helping me write this out, co-writing this particular episode. She's given me some vital information to connect and mesh with the information that I'm going to give. Also, some of my resource material is from the website Authentic Manhood. How ironic that I got the 5 degrees of communication from a thing about manhood, because us as men, we need to learn how to communicate how we feel. And there's a book I encourage you to get. It's by John Powell. And this is where a majority of this is from. There's a book called Why I'm Afraid to Tell You Who I Am. Please get that book, read it. It's good for anybody. But definitely if you are a man, it doesn't matter what age you are, please read the book, Why I'm Afraid to Tell You Who I Am. That's a really good book. So before we get into the 5 levels of communication, let's just talk about a few things that communication is. The first thing is that communication is being able to hear, not listen, but hear. You can listen to music, but not pay attention to the lyrics. Hearing something and listening to something makes all the difference. Anybody can listen to what you're saying, but those who hear you can take it into action. It's different. Hearing something and, hearing something and listening and being understanding of something, you have to be very understanding. You have to listen to be able to apply the information to your life, to apply what is being communicated, apply what is being conveyed to you. And you have to be able to decipher the truth from a lie. You have to be able to, and also once something's communicated to you, you have to be willing to, be able to decipher what it is, and understand what it means. The second thing that communication is knowledge. Communication is knowledge. When you are in school, when the teacher gives you a direction, these are for any students that listen to, that are in school right now or getting ready to go back to school. I know we are in summer break right now. We are dealing with summer break, or we've been in an extended summer break since March. But we have to understand that when somebody communicates a message to you, especially when it's an encouraging message, especially when it's an encouraging word, that is an impartation. Once again, let's look at the definition for impartation, or imparting. And so the definition for impart is to make information known, to communicate, to pass on, to transmit, to relay, to relate, to recount, to set forth, to present, to tell, to make known, to make public, to go public with, to report, to announce, to proclaim. Those are synonyms. To communicate, pass on, convey. Those are synonyms for the word. And this is a verb word, meaning, it's a verb. And then another word for that, another definition for the word impart is to bestow a quality. It is to give, to confer, to grant, to lend, to accord, to afford, to provide, to supply, to offer, to yield, to contribute. When you are imparting in somebody, you are bestowing something in them. There is a quality that you are trying to bestow. And also to make information known and to communicate. And as teachers have a obligation and a duty to impart wisdom into students. Motivational speakers have a duty to impart wisdom and encouragement to a student, to somebody that is listening. Pastors, ministers have a duty and a duty to impart the word to somebody. They have a duty to impart and encourage and to uplift. And so knowledge means to, with knowledge, you have to impart what you have to, when you're communicating with somebody, not only are you giving knowledge, but make sure you are knowledgeable about what you're saying. And make sure, just make sure you know what you're talking about when you're communicating. So not only is communication being able to hear, but communication is knowledge. And third, that communication is nothing if it is done incorrectly. We have to be effective in our communication. We have to be, we have to make sure that we are clear about what we're saying. We have to be understanding in what we're saying. Clarity of speech, clarity of communication is a big thing, because in this world, in our culture right now, so many things can be misconstrued. So many things can be misunderstood. So many things can be taken the wrong way. And we have to be able to understand and decipher when communication is malicious, communication is insensitive, communication is there's certain levels of communication, or when you have to understand that some communication is out of touch, can it can really, if you're not effective with what you're communicating and you're conveying, you will really mess somebody up. And so you have to be intentional about how you communicate to somebody. You have to be intentional about that. But let's talk about just a second about the communication, the steps of communication and levels of communication. Communication has steps, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy whatsoever. Communication is easy because when you work at it, you're trying to get somebody to understand what's really going on with you, or what's who you really are. And so there are some steps and there are some levels to communication. And like I said, let's go into it. Let's talk about the levels of communication just quickly. And then we will get you up out of here. I hope I'm not rambling too much. I hope I'm giving you something that you need. I hope there's something within this that is really speaking to you and really helping you out as far as being a better communicator of feelings, communication of direction, just communication of information, communication about who you are as a person. So let's talk about the 5 degrees of communication. Okay. So the first level is the cliche level. A lot of people, everybody starts on this one. The cliche level, the usual, hey, how's it going? How you doing? How about this weather? How about the game? Da-da-da-da-da-da. This conversation with a stranger. That's what the cliche level is, the usual. Hi, how are you? What's going on? How's this? It's not, the usual conversation and whatnot. It's mainly hi, how are you? Hi, bye, what's up? You don't have to know these people. And so many, and we'll get into this in just a little bit, about this type of level, and we'll go even further into it in just a second. The second level is the fact level. Communication, this is more of a, this is how we get things done. This is directive level, okay? This is the level that you have at your job. When you first start a job, this is the fact level of communication is, and I hope I'm getting this right, when you go to a job orientation. This level of communication is to let you know the history of a company, the history of the school, the history of so many things. This is more of a need to know type deal. That's fact level. And this is how we get it done. There's no exchanging of feelings. There's none of that. It's just, this is what we do. This is how we're going to do it. These are our standards. Boom, boom, boom. That's that. You don't have time to exchange feelings on this level. It's just about directives. Third level of communication is the opinion level. And it can be very deceptive in so many cases. It is, when you convey opinions amongst each other. It's when you share basically what you think, not who you are. It's not even an energizing level of communication. It's just all opinions. That's basically, it. Like I said, it's a deceptive level of communication. And your heart can stay hidden behind your opinions. And, you know, it's just a discussion. It's just a discussion of opinions. We all have been on this level of communication. The fourth one is the emotional level. At this point right here, you're sharing how you feel. You're sharing, your heart begins getting revealed at a certain point. And this is the emotional level. I feel I'm hurt. I feel like I feel like I got stabbed in the back. I feel like I got punched in the face. This is what I feel. This is the emotional level. My feelings are hurt. I know recently I was on this particular level of communication with several people about several things that have gone on, about how I feel about certain situations. And I tried to do it in a healthy, non-demeaning, attacking manner. And sometimes when we get on this level, sometimes we say things not knowing how it's going to hurt somebody, not knowing that it's going to hurt somebody. And we have to be willing to convey this level of communication in a healthy way. We have to convey and express and display this type of communication level the best way we can. Some people don't know how to do this in a healthy manner. So, you're in this case, in a lot of cases, you're conveying your hopes and fears and your disappointments and defeats, and that's just what it is. We never reach this level as a man. As a man, I said at the beginning of the show, it took me years to reach this particular level. These last two levels right here, and I'm going to talk about the fifth one in just a second. It takes a long time as a man to get to these last two levels, especially the emotional level. We're not trained, especially in a household, like in a household with a black, as a black male. We're not trained to say how we feel, because when we say how we feel, we're considered soft. I know that's somebody's testimony who is still growing and learning how to convey how they feel. There is a author, a motivational speaker, a guy that I really pay attention to in a lot of ways. His name is Jason Wilson. He wrote a book called Cry Like a Man. And it really will open the door for you. It will really open the door as far as, being able to communicate feelings as a man. And how to do it in such a way that it brings release. It brings a new level of communication, and brings a new sense of freedom, being able to share how you feel. And that's what leads us into the fifth and final level of communication. And that fifth and final level of communication is the transparency level. This is the level that a lot of people don't ever get to. A lot of people don't ever get to this point in their life where they are communicating on a transparent level, sharing what they've been through. This is a level of trust that a lot of people will not get access to. A lot of people won't get to this point. But then again, a lot of people won't. As far when I say a lot of people won't get to this point, I mean it by this, that you will have some people in your life that will stay, and here we go. There are a lot of people in your life that will forever stay on the cliche level. There will be a lot of people that stay right there. There will be a lot of people, your coworkers, that will stay on the fact level. But there will be, as the higher you get as far as the levels go, the thinner the air and the thinner the crowd. We have to understand that not everybody will connect with you on an emotional and a transparent level. Not everybody will get to these levels simply because they haven't gained the access to it. And you have to learn, and I say this all the time, to guard your heart. You have to guard who you are. You have to guard your emotions. You can't convey and express your emotions and your story and your transparency and your testimony and what you're going through to everybody. You have to learn how to find somebody to confide in. And you have to know what to say, when to say it about yourself. Because people will take advantage of the emotional and transparent level and will use it to demean you, to make you feel bad, to make you look like you're a terrible, crazy, insane, psychotic person, when you're just a person that has been broken, that has been damaged, that is a product of grace, that is a product and a product of healing. You have to understand that not everybody's going to be able to handle your story, handle your emotional level, and handle your level of transparency, because they are still in fact dealing with themselves and dealing with getting to the point of being on an emotional level and being on a level where they're transparent enough to be free from everything that has held them in bondage. And you got to understand that it's going to take time to get to the emotional level. It's going to take patience. It's going to take work. It's going to take a little bit. Take a little bit of trust. You have to, and that trust is this: you have to trust God. You have to be faithful to God in this moment, especially in moments of transparency, especially when you are trying to get free from something. Because the greatest person to be transparent to is to God. Let him know what you're going. He knows what you're going through, but he is waiting on you to talk to him. Sometimes the best person to talk to is God. Especially when you're going through. Especially when it is hard to communicate to other people what you are going through. And so with the transparency level, this is a level that has taken me years to get to, especially when I'm talking to somebody about how life has been, how my life has been, how I've gone through certain things through life. And so we have to be willing to grow and progress as far as our levels of communication. And I say it about everything else, about friendships, about relationships, about love, about trust, about now this communication, is that you cannot, and I say it, and this is starting to sound cliche. It's starting to sound like a broken record, a skipping record, that you can't give cliche level people transparency level access to transparency level access. You can't be transparent to somebody that you're cliche with, and some of your friendships have turned into cliche level the communication between some of your friendships have gone from being a transparent level of communication to cliche level communication. When you used to talk all the time, and now you go from talking all the time to now it's hi and bye. Some of our relationships that we are in now, marriages that we are in now, have gone from transparency to cliche. We barely even talk to the people that we are married to, or we're in relationships with. We barely talk to our family members. Now our things have gone from cliche. I've gone from transparency, to emotional and transparency levels to cliche. And we have to be willing to understand that with certain levels of relationships, there are certain levels of communication. Connect the two together and make sure that you are conveying how you feel to somebody, that somebody that you're close to that has hurt you, that has pained you, that has betrayed your trust, betrayed your love, betrayed your emotions, betrayed your transparency, who has taken advantage of your communication level, has taken advantage of your testimony, has taken advantage of what you're going through, has taken advantage of your healing. You have to be able to convey how you feel in those moments. And so I encourage you to take some time and communicate and learn the value of communication. Because I need you to understand that communication can destroy. Communication can heal. It can build. It can also tear down. All forms are needed, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that with bad communication, we will not know how good communication works. We have to be able to translate how we feel. We have to be able to translate our emotions in a healthy way. And so, like previously said, be willing to understand the value of proper communication, decipher between good and bad communication, understand the levels of communication, because that will do all the greater good in the world. And please understand this quote again, that you have to understand that the biggest communication problem is that we do not listen to understand, but we listen to reply. We have to be willing to listen and not always have a rebuttal for everything, or to always try to get the last word or to outspeak the next person. We have to understand that communication, you have to be willing to listen. So understand the value of communication this weekend. As we go into the weekend, talk to people. Talk to those people that you're close to, because they need to know because there are some people that you need to be transparent with, and you need to have people that need to understand who you are and what you're going through as a person. So communicate this week. Understand this, and also go back, and once again, this is inspired by, and these degrees of communication are brought to you by the website authenticmanhood.com, and there's mainly an article called mainly a blog called The 5 Degrees of Communication. Also, those books that I told you are by Jason Wilson, and that book is called Cry Like a Man. Cry Like a Man. Get that book. I encourage you to get that book. And I also to encourage you, as far as communication is involved, to get the book Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am? It's by John Powell. Please get those books. Read them. Pass them on. Encourage somebody else to buy those books, because they are a great tool involving emotional. With Mr. Wilson's book, Cry Like a Man, involving communication on an emotional level. But then also, Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am is a good tool and a good book on the 5 levels and the 5 degrees of communication, and understanding that we go from shallow communication to deep communication once we go higher into the levels of it. So please, I encourage you to get those books. Also, once again, thank you, Maisha Russell. Thank you for thank you for for helping me co-write this episode. I can't thank you enough. Please follow her on Instagram at Royal_Lanice. Royal_Lanice. Please follow her and thank her for the information that she has helped me get as far as this episode is concerned. Also, if you're in the following mood, follow me on both. Follow my personal page at AlexJ_Live. That's on Instagram. Also her Instagram again is Royal_Lanice. Follow her on Instagram as well. And then the show page is 22_podcast. Please follow the show. Send an encouraging message. Pass this show along. Tell people about what the 2-2 podcast is all about. And then also, please, give suggestions, give information involving an episode. Tell me how you feel about communication. We're going to do our best to be interactive with one another, and it's involving each episode that happens. And also, don't forget, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 p.m., right here on Anchor and Spotify and wherever you listen to podcasts. Please encourage somebody to listen. Get your family together, get your friends together, and listen to this show each and every week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And don't you forget, if you have Instagram, on IG Live, on Tuesday nights, it's Tuesday Night Live. So we'll basically take what we do on the podcast and apply it to a live format, to a video format. And we talk about what has been going on, what was talked about on the Tuesday episode of the 2-2 podcast. And we answer some questions. We interact with one another. We have fun. We crack jokes. This is more informal. It's more authentic. It's a bit more transparent. And I let you in a little bit on who I am as a person. And I pray that you continue to stick with all facets of this show and what's going to happen with the 2-2 brand. Because this thing is going to evolve into something great. I feel it. I'm praying on it. I'm sowing into it. And I'm believing for it. I have faith that what this is going to evolve into is going to be in a multimedia thing that helps people. It's going to be something that helps us with podcasting, with videos, with live feeds, with everything that pertains, traveling and going to school tours, to speaking to schools and church groups and youth groups all over the country. I believe this is going to evolve into something that reaches and spans all across the country. So I encourage you, stick with it. Keep praying for it. Keep being encouraging, and keep listening, as always. So with that being said, listen, we'll see you next Tuesday, 1 and 7 p.m. for something that I believe you're going to like. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. So, like I said, let's do this thing, y'all. We'll see you next Tuesday here on the 2-2 podcast.